right, so you can see how they're still adjustable here. You've got some tension on the screw to help you get them aligned, and you want it just recessed. You also got to get it perfectly lined up as well. They need to be straight. All right, I'm going to play with these here for a second, and then I'll tighten them down. All right, so I've got these started here, and I've got them tight, but I can still adjust them. The cool thing about this clipper is that it's not the adjustable one. Like this one, you can adjust that, which we'll get to that one here in a second, but this one here doesn't have an adjustment. It's always set to be super tight. So you want to try to zero gap these. I'm going to line them up here on my board so that they're perfectly square and parallel. But if this top blade is further up, you can cut. And I cut my little boy's hair with this, so I do not want to cut him. And so I'm going to bring those back just a little bit. And I have enough tension here that things aren't moving. But it's a little bit of fiddling back and forth, making sure that it looks like it's level. You also don't want them canted from each other. You want them nice and square so you get the good result in the haircut. It looks like I'm a little high over here. I'm going to start over. It's a little fiddly for sure. Now I'm going to try to hold that while I tighten, because I don't want it to move. Now that I've got one tight, I'm just going to double check. And then I can tighten in the bottom one. All right, I'm sure the alignment is not going to come through on camera, but this bottom guard is is actually higher. This guard, bottom, whichever's the bottom. The bottom one on the machine, you want to be a little more proud. And looks like we're perfectly straight. It's about where it was, I would say, and we're tight, so we'll put this back together. Actually, I'm going to do a little bit of oil. I have some oil that we'll put on there before we use it. So there's no adjustment here. These self-center, and so they'll be nice and square. So we got these sharpened. I'll oil them up later. It's almost a little bit easier to see while they're running. But you can see that now this is the top one. The top one is just a little bit below. You can see a glint on the bottom there from where we freshly sharpened it. And it looks even across. Looks good. These will go back to work. So these come apart the same way. All right, so these sharpen the same. I think this is officially called lapping. Make sure they're nice and clean. There's no buildup or anything. And just a normal whetstone. Now we're at a very high polish here. We're not repairing anything, and so we are just lapping this to sharpen it. Doesn't take much. Just trying to keep things even. You want to make sure your stones are flat. I do quite a bit of maintenance on mine since I use them pretty often, and try to keep them as flat as possible. they don't show any unusual wear, so I'll switch to the other side here in just a second. Same on this, these two planes rest flat against the stone. Even everything up, give it a nice edge. Nice even shine all the way across. And we'll switch to the fine. I'm not pushing too hard. Light, even pressure. Real even, consistent finish there. Looks like we're touching all the way across. Looks good. Let's put these back together and get them set up. So if you take this all the way apart like I did to clean it here, which is probably good to do every once in a while, this little piece is what rests inside there, and it slides back and forth. I went ahead and flipped mine to the other side so it's riding on a fresh side. I don't know that that matters too much. It doesn't show much wear, but I think that will be good. So it's kind of like the amount of wear that's there is real small, but it'll kind of get a fresh side to ride on. And then this tension right here is set by this screw, and we'll set that up later. That's too tight. We'll mess with that later. It needs to be able to move, but not too much. And then this part gets screwed down to right there with the small screws. Okay, so here's the adjustment on this one. When your guard is all the way in, you want to make sure that we're not too far down on the bottom. We want it to be nice and even, and we don't want the top blades to stick out. So just like we did on the other one, we want to be just beyond right there. So I'm going to set this against my board, and I'll start those screws back here, get them tight, and then we'll have some adjustment from there. All right, so those are snugged. We're going to come up just a little bit. All right, so I just took these back apart here. I wasn't happy with the amount of play that was here. And I know this still looks like a lot, but it does tighten up. What I did was put this in my vise and just barely close the jaws here to kind of bring that tolerance down a little bit. And it does fit a lot. There was a lot of play, and there's just a little bit of play now. So I feel like that's going to make it run quite a bit smoother. So let's get this cover back on here. There's not much to the cover. If you can take it apart, you can pretty much put it back together. It clips up there in the front, and then the back you usually just have to kind of adjust the cord, and it will snap back together. You can run your screws in. That's a lot better. Unfortunately, you can't take this off without taking the top cover off. It's mostly designed to all be serviceable here without taking the whole thing apart, but I wanted to clean everything, and I think it looks a whole lot better. So now this part has a on the lever, it's got a little spot that indexes there where it gets its leverage from. So there is some tension here required to make it operate properly. There we go, that's a whole lot better. These move nice and level with each other. Alright, so we've got this tightened up and they are moving level with no side to side play. So I think let's put the top back on. This part rests right there. Bit of a balancing act here getting this back together. All right, so finally figured out to tighten this here screw, and I think it's going to work. Getting the tension just right. If it's too loose, that screw kind of tends to back out. So I actually put a drop of super glue on the threads because those threads just go into a plastic housing, and I think over time that's just kind of worn out. So I'm hoping that super glue will give me just a little bit of traction, and it shouldn't keep me from taking it apart in the future. So normally I don't take this apart. Normally if you're going to sharpen them or clean them, you can just back these two off and you can access everything. So these are set up. I'm not going to mess with them because I want that super glue to stay right there. So all right, these are the Andis Speedmasters, and they clean up real nice. All right, thanks for watching.